But my larger point, and I assume Ruben's, I don't care.
Ready to rock and roll for you for the next 2 hours right here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. You got your Mac and Mac Birds 365 guys, McMullen and McDonald. J Mac, I know you were streaming your life away yesterday, zooming your life away, because there are a couple of big press gatherings with Eagles ties in yesterday's owners meeting down in Florida. First Nick Sirianni and then Jeff Lurie. But before you even go there, I need to ask you, how excited are you about Kelly Green?
You hit me there right off the bat.
Yes,
yeah, I don't give a flying. And I put this on Twitter. I don't give a flying. You know what about uniform? I don't. I'm sorry. I don't. It's not just the Eagles either. I just don't care. Like, I assume if you're the fan of a team, and I'm pretty above board. I mean, some people don't get it in the modern world, but I don't, root for the Eagles. I cover the Eagles. It's not about dislike like anything else. But my assumption is if you root for a team, you're going to root for them no matter what they're wearing. That would be my guess. So I don't know but I've never been a jersey guy. I've never bought a bunch of jerseys. I don't get into it. So that's just a personal thing. I can't muster up. And I thank Ed Kratz, and I want to give Ed Kratz a shout out because he volunteered to take care of the uniform writing because I'd rather write about anything else. I find it really hard to care. I'm sorry. And it's an apology.
I knew you were going there because I did see your tweet. And I had Ruben Frank on my show on WIP last night, and he said basically the same thing. Maybe I'm more of a fan than you are. I was trying to come up with an analogy, and I came up with this, and I think it fits, but it fits for me. Doesn't mean it's going to fit for you or anybody else. When you go to a show, when I say show, I mean a concert these days, and there's a top flight act that you've been dying to see, and the concert tickets are uber expensive, and you go in there to see that show. And they have an opening act. And the opening act is really good, too. Certainly not as good as the main line, but you're going to go and you're going to be there, and you might as well enjoy the music and have a good time with it. So you get real pumped up when they have a good opening act. You wouldn't go just to see the opening act, but you're going to see the main person on the stage. But it just adds to the experience when you really like the opening act and it puts on a good show. That's like the Eagles and the jerseys. Are you going to not be a fan because they don't wear Kelly Green? For those poor people who dropped off 20 plus years ago, I feel sorry for them because it's been a long time since they wore the Kelly Green, but it's a nice little added element to it. If you really like the uniform that your team is wearing, and maybe it's the Irish in me, and I would say shame on you, McMullen. There's a lot of Irish in you too, that you can't get behind Kelly Green. That's just wrong.
Well, it's not about I can't get behind it. It's about it doesn't matter to me. It doesn't matter to me one way or the other.
That to me would be the equivalent of can't get behind. I don't care.
I'm not, if you care, I'm not saying don't care. I'm not saying you have to think like me. You have to not care. I mean, knock yourself out if it affects you that much. I'm not telling people not to care about it. I'm just saying I don't get it. Personally, I don't get it. And I would say, a team I am a fan of, which I'm very honest because I don't cover them. I've never really covered the sport, basically, so I haven't become disenfranchised to the point where I can't root for a team, is the New York Yankees, who probably have the most iconic uniform maybe in sports history because of their history. Now, if they change tomorrow into this garish modern thing, I'd probably be a little peeved off, but I wouldn't care. I'd still root for the team. I mean, I'm not going out and buying jerseys and buying hats. And by the way, from the NFL's perspective, I'm kind of surprised that such a money grubbing entity has taken such a hard line on this nonsense for how long. Like if you turn on Saturday, Oregon, they got a different stinking uniform on every 2 weeks.
Yes.
Yeah, green helmet, black helmet, Kelly green, whatever, black jerseys. Players like the black jersey. I'm surprised they're not trying to pick your pocket for all of it. So if you want your pocket picked for all of it, Godspeed. I don't. But my larger point, and I assume Ruben's, I don't care. It's not to me, and we do this show every day. Like it's much more important. Like there were conflicting reports. I thought you're going to hit me up with Derek Barnett's contract because they're reflecting the thing's so damn complicated. There's conflicting reports again. Howie's driving me crazy with this stuff. Turns out we got it right on the show yesterday. It's essentially a 1-year deal,
right,
for $4.5 million. That there's a team option, essentially, to use again a baseball terminology. There's a team option, but it's essentially a 1-year deal for $4.5 million. That could be $5.5 million if Derek plays all 17 games, which he rarely does. So, it's a very cost-effective deal. But then that news gets out there: 2 years, $14 million, 13. I don't know where it came, but it's out there and people believe it. It's not the case of the contract. That to me, though, is important to the Eagles and moving forward because and we bandied that back and forth. Like you and I are actually on the same page. If Derek Barnett's playing is a starting player on this team, I think it's a bad decision. That's where we differ. I think the plan is he'll be a rotational end. He'll be a backup. He'll play 30% of the snaps or something like that. And then I think it's a good decision. But if it doesn't turn out that way, I'm going to jump into your camp and say, like, I think that stuff is substance. I don't think uniforms are substance. And maybe I'm a sports snob because, look, let's be honest. I mean, none of this is important in the real world, professional sports, but it's what we do. And, it's important to us. So I'm not going to yell at you if uniforms are important to you, but I'm also not going to pretend I can't pretend I care because I don't.
Yeah, Ruben last night said, Jody, if you ask me a half an hour after any Eagle game that I color, oh, by the way, what color were their jerseys?
Well, I'm with Ruben, man.
Probably can't answer. Don't know. Don't take note. Note really doesn't really matter.
People tweet me all the time during the week, Jody. They say, do you know what the Eagles are wearing this week? Because they announce it. And I'm like, every week, I'm like, are you serious? I don't care. I don't pay attention. I don't know. I don't get it. Okay. That's where I'll leave it. I don't get it.
Is there a portion of the Eagle fan base that puts too much emphasis on it? Oh, of course there is. But you can say that about almost anything. But just generally speaking, if there's a pretty big portion that would like to see the Eagles return to Kelly Green, that's why Jeff Lurie has been pretty adamant about this, because I think he's got a good grasp on what his fan base thinks. Sometimes he reacts to it, sometimes he doesn't, but in this case he did, and he has been attempting to get it put through the league, which I'm with you. Why they wouldn't just say, go nuts. Do whatever you want to do. The more you make, the more the merrier. Go ahead, put some money in your pocket.
Yeah, I'm surprised.
Because it is a money grab. You're right. I don't understand the league. I understand the Eagles. I'm glad they're back to Kelly Green, even if it's just a specialty uniform that they're going to wear once, at most twice a year. It'll be cool when they put it back on. All right, did want to get that out of the way. We've got more important fish to fry, including Jeff Lurie, the guy who made Kelly Green happen, who spoke yesterday. Here's my first question of the day of consequence, because how excited you are for Kelly Green wasn't really of consequence. What year does Julian Lurie take over the Eagles?
I don't think it's coming that quickly. And again, everything depends on Jeffrey's health, and hopefully he remains healthy for a long time. But he is, 70 years old. But from what he said yesterday, there's no, plan in place other than he's getting Julian ready by trying to show him every part of the organization, try to get his, some experience, every beat, his feet wet, trying to learn from the things he did wrong. He mentioned, which by the way aren't a lot, evidently over the past few years, but he did admit to some mistakes as a young owner, which is understandable. That's a position you got to grow in. And hopefully he can avoid some of those mistakes. But, the part of he doesn't know if Julian wants to take over the Eagles, I think is a little bit dishonest.
Disingenuous.
Yeah, disingenuous. Thank you. He's taken over the Eagles, Julian. And there's nothing wrong with, I mean, that's the way these things work. The problem is, and you've seen it in other sports in the NFL, just because you're related to somebody doesn't mean you're going to run the organization in the same way when you do get your opportunity to run the organization. So Julian Lurie, whenever he takes over, will, be judged on what he does with the organization. And, I will say, and I took a lot of shots at Jeffrey yesterday because it's easy. And many of them were just jokes, about his.
You going Chris Rock on Jeff Lurie? Is that what you're doing?
No, I just think it's funny that he comes up with, the only, the 3 picks he was invested in happened to be Lane Johnson, Jordan Mailata, and Russell Wilson. I mean, come on, dude. Come on. That stuff's easy.
And he begged off J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. They asked him, and if you guys both have him as top quality players, I'm going to leave it up to you.
Yeah. And he's Mr. Oh, I'm gonna let you. So I made jokes about, I'm stepping back from all decision making in my house because I fully trust my wife. I'm going to take credit for the dog, the plants, and give her everything else. It's easy to make jokes when Jeffrey says stuff like this, but I will also admit he's one of the best owners in the NFL, and I've said that pretty consistently. So I feel I can make a joke here and there, but he's like everybody else. He's got his quirks and he spins things in a certain way. I love the Deshaun Watson conversation because this team can't say no. They can't just say no. And there's a reason they can't say no because it's true. And, probably the part of the press conference that got reporters most upset, not upset, that's probably the wrong term, but, they said when he kind of made fun of reporting, kind of put it in air quotes. And yet he confirmed reporting about J.J. Arcega-Whiteside. He confirmed essentially reporting about Mike Rowe and Press Taylor and Carson Walsh. It's all right. The Deshaun Watson, it's all right. You can't say no. You know why you can't say no? You weren't interested because you were interested. And if you do say no, people will come out and prove that you're full of what. So he's got to skate that fence. So there's little things, but there's, that happens in every ownership. And you saw it all around the NFL at the spring meetings, as you always do, because most owners talk at the spring meetings. And most contextually, most organizations are a bigger bleep show than this one is. Let's put it that way.
I thought it was intriguing in that if you listen to it from start to finish, his 30 plus minutes of talking to the media, and you listen to Jeff over the length of his ownership, he was kind of emphatic about one thing yesterday. And that was that he is, well, shoot, it's his team. He can be anything the hell he wants. He gets to write the rules for the organization. We'll just sit here and go, I don't know if he should be doing that. It seemed to me like one of the main things that an owner in his mind is responsible for is evaluating assistant coaches.
Yeah, well, he did. He did. And I texted a bunch of people right after. And because Jeffrey does not generally throw people under the bus. You saw it with Carson Wentz. He's not throwing Carson Wentz under the bus. He kind of threw Mike Rowe and Press Taylor under the bus. And I said, am I taking this the right way? I texted because, I said, that's how I took it. And a bunch of other people took it the same way. I was a little surprised by that because that's generally not the way Jeffrey does business. He's going to stay above the fray for whatever reason. And, you know, I'm trying to think of how much I can say, Jody. Carson didn't have a great relationship with Mike Rowe. And I think it's a little bit ironic because he put that little note in there that you got to be good with the quarterbacks first and foremost. So there's this assumption that Mike wasn't good with the quarterback and Press wasn't good with the quarterback for a different reason because he was too close to him.
Yeah, but now we know Frank Reich isn't good with quarterbacks either because Carson had the year that he just had. So who is? Do you think maybe it's the quarterback, or do you think maybe it's Carson Wentz that's the issue?
Well, probably. Yeah, not probably. That's look, John DiFilippo didn't get along with Carson. Did not like Flip. Flip is a hard ass, and he was on him, and that's one of the reasons, in my estimation, that Carson was his best under John DiFilippo. That's what he needed, but he didn't like it. And, but it's all how you see it. Like if you're in charge, Jody, you got the decision. So it's sort of like your filter, what you see. And if you take it as, well, John's doing a good job with Carson and Mike isn't, and Press isn't, then you make the decision you make. I think hindsight says what you just said. It was probably more the quarterback than the coaches.
Other than Zach Ertz, who did the quarterback really get along with? Who did the quarterback?
Well, he got along now, but I don't want to say that either because Carson got along with a lot of people. A lot of people. He got along with me. Well, in our limited relationship. Fletcher Cox loves Carson Wentz. Loves him. Yeah. There's a lot of guys in that locker room that like Carson Wentz, but
Fletcher wasn't one of the guys who built the statue to Nick Foles in the locker room after.
Well, Chris Long will talk about this all the time. I got to try to get Chris on the show. He's got his own podcast, but that was a joke. I mean, he went down to the AM/PM at the end of the street and got a bunch of gas station candles, and everybody made a big deal out of it. Chris Long loves Carson Wentz, loves Nick Foles as well. You can love them both. And they were just making a joke, and everybody blew that out of proportion, to say the least. But there's a lot, and it was mainly veteran guys. Especially the guys who went through the Super Bowl run. They all like Carson. Then there was this shift and really bottom of the roster, younger guys. And I'm not saying everybody because him and Darren got into it, Darren Sproles, and he's an older guy. And that's now reported, so we can talk about that. So it's not everybody. But when people do say, well, Carson got along with nobody, that's not the case. But he's very introverted. So people take it the wrong way. It's a position of leadership. So where Jalen Hurts is really good at, like when there's 90 people on the roster and they start off-season work, Jody, he's going to go introduce himself to everybody, to the 90th guy on the roster. And like he's the big deal. He's the quarterback. He's the face of the franchise. So that makes those guys feel good. And all of a sudden, they're like, when people say they gravitate towards Jalen Hurts, that's part of the reason. He tries to make sure he reaches out to everybody. Carson would just do his job and just sit in the corner and not try to engage everybody. And the guys he was involved with tend to really like him. But the guys are like, who's this guy? Why won't he talk to me? Emotional intelligence, as Jeffrey Lurie calls it. Chip Kelly didn't have it. Doug Peterson did have it for a short portion of time. Some people are extroverts. Some people are introverts. Carson's an introvert.
Well, it seemed to have cost Doug Peterson his job, which I don't necessarily think should have been the case. So maybe that's why I'm a little bit more vexed about it than other things. And yeah, if you can quickly explain it to me. And I'm trying to quote unquote this as best I can. I don't have it in front of me, but in one sentence, he said, I would never tell a coach to hire, comma, but I can evaluate any coach on our staff. Whoa. If you would never tell the coach who to hire, but you're going to evaluate who he hired after he hires him, so that mean the coach can hire anybody he wants? Which, oh, by the way, that's not true, because he absolutely didn't allow Doug Peterson to do what he wanted to do. You're not allowed to, at some point, you're allowed to fire somebody. But when you first get hired, it's completely on the coach. He can pick anybody he wants. And then afterwards, I'll decide who's hired and who's fired.
Well, I will say, I do think Jeffrey has the right to evaluate coaches. It's his team. We just talked about that.
He's got the right to do anything. If we start with
no,
he's
well,
the
that's
owner,
why,
he can do absolutely anything he wants.
Do you
the
have
question is, do you think he should be that involved?
Yeah, I've talked about it a lot. I don't think he has the expertise, especially with position coaches. Now, coordinators, head coach, a little bit different because they're different positions. There's some management involved as well. But as far as position coaches, so Carson Walsh is the guy. Carson Walsh is the guy I tend to harp on, because what the hell does Jeffrey Lurie know about the intricacies of the wide receiver position to scapegoat this guy? Now, that's just my opinion. As far as, having the ability to evaluate the Eagles and who to hire and not to hire, the Eagles will tell you, well, they'll get, it's Howie's responsibility to get a pool of candidates together. And then, Nick or Doug will get to choose and approve the candidate. So in the case of quarterbacks coach, for instance, this time around, like Nick didn't have a guy that he wanted to be quarterbacks coach. So Howie went out and found Brian Johnson, said, you should probably take a look at this guy. And then it was Nick's responsibility to interview him and hire him. That's what the Eagles say.
Are we sure Jeffrey wasn't involved with that?
Well, I don't.
Sounds to me like Jeffrey is more concerned with the makeup of the coaching staff than maybe anything else in the organization.
I don't think he would have the expertise to know where to go to find somebody. So I do think Howie.
Who gave him the expertise to tell him that Grow wasn't good enough? The press channel wasn't good enough.
His ego. I mean, he is a billionaire. I mean, yeah, he doesn't have the expertise to judge that, but he thinks he does. I mean, that's pretty much the explanation.
Yeah, but see, what you just said doesn't make any sense to me. You just said, well, Jeffrey knows he doesn't have enough expertise to do something
I didn't
like
say
that,
knows. I said he doesn't. I said he doesn't. Obviously, he doesn't know. He doesn't have the expertise. He thinks he should be in the position to judge. He can judge assistant coaches.
Then I don't ask my question again. Why? All right, never mind.
Ego. Well, I mean, he owns the team. He said, this is a position that I should be able to evaluate and tell them what to do. He's not the only owner that does that, by the way. And again, that's where we get into owners can do whatever they want, but I don't think it's that big of a surprise. If you ask me personally, and I said, especially with position coaches, no, I don't think he has the expertise to judge what they're doing well and what they're doing poorly, with the possible exception if he sees somebody berating somebody, or he sees somebody arguing or fighting or, something obvious. But if it comes down to, well, this guy's not a good route runner, so I'm going to blame Carson Walsh, I'd be like, come on, dude. What are you talking about? That's what I'm saying.
He is John McMullen. I'm Jody McDonald, the Mac and Mac Bird 365 guys. All right, we'll continue this conversation about Jeff Lurie because he is the most important person in the Eagles organization. Howie Roseman's the general manager. Nick Sirianni's the coach. Jalen Hurts is the quarterback. Don't kid yourself. The guy up top is Jeff Lurie. So what he had to say yesterday, pretty darn important. There are other Eagle issues we got to get into, and we'll get into them with our first guest next. You read him on CBSSports.com. You catch him often here on the JAKIB Media YouTube channel. Jeff Kerr joins us on Birds 365.